You know, there are a lot of different choices and methods in which you can store your cigars for travel, for at home, for another kind of at home. But at the end of the day, is there a wrong way to store them? Okay, let's take a look at a few different ways you can store your cigars in some humidor examples that I have here and find out whether or not you're doing it wrong. Let's start with my very first humidor. Most people, when they start in cigars, they get a desktop humidor, much like this one. I bought this one when I first started getting into cigars 20 years ago now. It holds about 15 to 20 cigars in there. And now, honestly, all that's in here are a few infused cigars that I want to keep separate from the rest of my cigars. I don't smoke infused cigars very often, but they have their own dedicated humidor. That's one thing you always want to make sure. If you have any flavor infused premium cigars, they need to be kept in a separate humidor from everything else. Otherwise, the infusion flavor notes will creep their way into the rest of your cigar collection. But then we have things like this, where this is a travel case and it zips for opening and close. It holds cigars, it holds, you know, a cutter and a lighter. It's got a place for your humidification pouch, but there's no way that this is air or moisture tight. It's going to leak humidity. So you're going to have to replace the humidification pouch or whatever you use in here much more often than you will in a desktop humidor, even though desktop humidors do leak humidity also. But maybe you want to go for something that's a little more utilitarian, something that you can just sort of throw around and not have to worry about. Maybe you go for something like this. This is from Harbor Freight. It's their version of a Pelican case. The brand is called Apache, and it's great. I take this when I go with me to a cigar lounge, or if I'm going to be out for, you know, a weekend, throw a bunch of cigars in there, go out, enjoy myself, have a great time. But it's great because this has a rubber seal, a silicone rubber seal around it all right here. And this little dial that's right here helps lock in the moisture. It makes it airtight and liquid tight. So there are multiple different options that you have for storing cigars. None of them are wrong. Let me pick up the next one. Hold on. Or maybe you want something where you can see all of your cigars and you want to go with something more like this, an acrylic humidor. So this is one that I've had for a few months now, quite a few months. And if you look, actually, there is the hygrometer right there. You can see it says 71% relative humidity. I have not re-humidified this little tray in here, which is just a skinny little bar you can see right there. I have not re-humidified this since I put the cigars in there. And if you want to learn more about this specific unit, you can click the video up here. I went through a full review and went through it all. But a question that I got from a couple people about this one was, Tim, you're storing cigars vertically. Is that going to change how they are? Is that going to change how much humidification they absorb? Is it bad for them? Honestly, I don't know. And I told them that. I wasn't sure. We'll have to see, because I have never had a humidor where I stored my cigars standing up vertically. So let's go to another kind here. Maybe you're wanting something that you can look at and see where your cigars are inside. Don't pay attention to the analog hygrometer here. I just put all these cigars in here for this video so you could see it. But this is a humidor. It's a glass top desktop humidor. And these are known for leaking the most. These are the ones that are the hardest to keep humidity in because they have glass. They have another opportunity for humidity to leak out. But they're great. They hold cigars. It's a great starter humidor for somebody that has a cigar with their buddies a couple times a year. This is a perfect case for it. But then we can get into stuff that is a little more robust for your collection. Something like this. It's just like the Pelican case knockoff, the Apache that I showed you earlier, but it's this one here. It is an Apache, and it just holds more cigars. This holds probably about 50 to 70 cigars, depending on their size. And you just take out the foam right here, as you can see. You take out the center portion of it, leave enough around for padding so that you don't damage the cigars, load it up, throw your humidification in, and you're ready to go. So very, very simple, very easy to use. And then there are other kinds. I've got a big rolling suitcase size Apache one here. I don't need to lift it up and show you. It's the same idea of what I just showed you. But then there are two other kinds of humidors that are absolutely fantastic to make sure that you're not storing your cigars improperly. Number one, let's start with an expensive version, an expensive example. A Thermoelectric humidor. So there are many different brands that put them out. They've been out on the market for about 5 years or so is when they started really gaining in popularity. And these are humidors that you plug into an outlet. They've got a fan that circulates the moisture and the humidity in there so you don't have to rotate your cigars as much. They have a thermostat built into them so that you can cool the temperature down in there to a certain temperature range that you like, or some of them heat and cool. So if you're in a climate that needs to not have your cigars get too cold in the winter and too hot during the summer, they're able to maintain a temperature range that you like, but they also hold on to humidity very, very well. They have a seal around the door that is just like a refrigerator, so it is very, very airtight. They function very well, they're very efficient, they're very quiet, and they work great. But they are not the cheapest option if you're looking to store 50, 75, 100, 200, 300, 1,500 cigars. They may not be the most cost-effective for you. So let's talk about the last version. The last way is probably the most affordable way that you can store your cigars, and that is a Tupper Door. So a Tupper Door is basically a plastic tub that has a lid that seals down on it with a rubber gasket in the lid so that it is airtight. The thing with this, as with all of the other humidors with the exception of the Thermoelectric ones, is you just need to make sure that wherever you are storing your cigars, that they are in a room or a cabinet or pantry or whatever it may be that isn't going to get too hot, because temperature can absolutely affect your cigars. But the brand that I see used time and time again is a brand called Sistema. I think the most popular one that I've seen over and over again is the Sistema 236, if I'm not mistaken. It's on Amazon, you can get it, and I see them all the time. I've got good friends of mine that use the Sistema brand, and they have, dozens of these Tupper Doors, and they've got hundreds of cigars for their cigar collection stored in there. So there's really no wrong way to choose how to store your cigars, but there is a wrong way in maintaining your cigars, and that comes down to temperature and humidity. So there's this age-old rule of 70-70. You've got to have it at 70 degrees, and you've got to have it at 70% relative humidity. Anything other than that, you're going to mess up your cigars. Not true, in my opinion, not true at all. My Thermoelectric humidors, all of them temperature-wise, are set at about 64 degrees. And the relative humidity in any of my Thermoelectric humidors is at about 64% relative humidity, 65%, because what that does is that gets my cigars at about 62% relative humidity. You're not going to be able to get your cigars to have the exact same relative humidity as the container that they're in. You can try, good luck, but there's no way that they are going to absorb and match exactly with what the relative humidity of the humidor is. Now, if you have a cigar that is over humidified and you put it in with other drier cigars, yeah, it's going to come down, it's going to balance out. But really what it comes down to when it comes to temperature is you're going to want to stay below 75 degrees Fahrenheit. I would not go any higher than that. I did in one of my humidors. At one point, I don't have that humidor anymore, and it got up to 80 degrees for a few days, and my humidity was at 70%. Bloom of mold started. So I had to get rid of all the cigars that were in there. Weren't a whole lot, but I had to get rid of cigars and the humidor. I just got rid of it. It was easier to do it that way, but you don't want to go too high. So humidity-wise, I would not go over, personally, I would not go over about 72% relative humidity. Honestly, your cigars won't smoke well if they're that humid. You'll get a tight draw. They'll be noticeably like more sponge-like because the leaves have absorbed a lot of moisture. And you're gonna get a bad burn. You're gonna have to relight it over and over and over again. So humidity-wise, honestly, I would keep cigars at about 68% relative humidity and lower. And everybody's got their own preference on it. So it's completely up to you and the way that you like to enjoy your cigars burning, how they smoke, all those different things. But when it comes to the humidity and temperature combined, you've got to play around if you live in a climate where it's more humid, and especially if it's more humid during the spring and summertime. I mean, Louisiana, Georgia, Texas, Alabama, all those different states where it gets very humid. You're going to want to make sure that you bring the temperature down pretty far to maybe 60 degrees, because if you're in a place where the humidity is still staying at about that 68 to 70%, if you're getting into the higher temperatures and the higher humidity together, you're going to get a mold bloom. You're going to risk the chance of having tobacco beetles hatch, and you'll see little itty bitty microscopic or like pinholes in the wrapper of your cigar and the cellophane as well. So really, it doesn't come down to you're storing your cigars wrong. It comes down to check as to whether or not you're maintaining your cigars correctly or not. If you're doing it wrong, make adjustments. But don't let somebody else tell you you're doing it wrong. You're just going to completely mess up your cigars. How dare you? Because if you find a range that you like, stick with it. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that as long as you're within a range that you enjoy your cigars, because it's your cigar collection. It's not your buddies. It's not your brothers. It's not your sisters. It's not your moms. It's not your dads, grandpas. It doesn't matter. None of their opinion matters because it's your cigar collection. So just make sure you're staying under that 70-70 rule. I'm not a fan of the 70-70 exactly. I'm much more, as you heard, of about a 65-67, 65-68 kind of person when it comes to storing my cigars. But find the container that works best for you. Find the method that works best for you, whether you're using an active humidification like the Cigar Oasis that have a fan and it blows the water vapors around and circles it around your humidor, whether you've got a passive one where it's a tray and it's just got beads that are in it, whether it's one of the humidification packs, whether it's Integra Boost like you saw in one of mine, whether it's Boveda, whatever it may be. Find the system that works best for you and go with that. But play with it a little bit. You'll notice, especially if you're not in a thermoelectric one, that depending on the time of year, you're going to see some fluctuation within each of those humidors, whether it's a Tupper Door, desktop, cabinet style, whatever it may be. There will always be fluctuation. The goal is to keep it in a normalized range so that you don't risk damaging, ruining, and frankly, just throwing your money away. So drop any comments down below if you have them as far as what you do, what system do you use. I would love to get your thoughts on it because, yeah, you can store your cigars wrong, meaning you can put them in the light, you can do this, you can do that, you can not store them in humidification at all. But what it comes down to is make sure you're maintaining your cigars the way that you want them to be maintained so that they smoke the way that you want to smoke them. But above all else, enjoy your cigar journey, everybody. I'm Cigar Show Tim. As always, I'll see you.